Aliens exist and President Trump knows about it. That's according to Israel's former space security chief. In an interview with an Israeli newspaper, he said the aliens have been waiting until today for humanity to develop and reach a stage where we will understand in general what space and spaceships are. NBC News chief global correspondent Bill Neely explains this one.
Hi, Alison. Well, this is quite a story, and it comes from the man who headed Israel's space security program for nearly 30 years. Chaim Eshed is making the extraordinary claim that the United States and Israel have been in contact with a group of aliens for years. Not immigrants, but extraterrestrials. He has called them the Galactic Federation of Aliens, and he says President Trump is aware of the existence of these aliens and had been on the verge of revealing their secrets, he claims, but was asked not to do so by the Federation in order to prevent what he calls mass hysteria. Well, the retired general says the US and Israel have kept it from the public because, quotes, humanity isn't ready and the aliens don't want to reveal themselves until humanity can evolve, he says, and understand what space really is. Well, the good news is that he claims an agreement has been reached between the US government and the aliens, a contract to do experiments here. There's also, he says, a secret underground base on Mars where there are American and alien representatives. Now, this former head of a branch of Israel's defense ministry is 87. He was very well respected, at least until now. And he said all this in an interview with an Israeli newspaper in Hebrew, but it's really taken off after parts of it were published in English by the Jerusalem Post today. He says he's come forward now in the hope that his news will be accepted as true. He notes that if he'd made these claims 5 years ago, he would have been hospitalized, but now he says, I've got nothing to lose. Well, so far, President Trump has not tweeted about this, though remember a year ago, he did set up the Space Force as the fifth branch of the US Armed Forces.
Storm is no longer coming. It's here. As the world watched the headlines spin tales of distraction, something much larger was unfolding behind the curtain. A covert military-grade operation decades in the making is now underway. And if you've been paying attention, the signs are no longer subtle. Let's go back to 2 June 2025. That's when insiders confirmed the quantum financial system, the long-rumored replacement to the corrupt, debt-based Fiat model, was quietly activated across all sovereign nodes. The SWIFT network, the IMF, the Bisol relics of globalist control were cut from liquidity lines. A silent coup in the financial world had begun. Just 11 days later, on 13 June, the first 48-hour global currency reset blackout swept through select markets. What looked like routine system maintenance to the untrained eye was in fact a massive recalibration into an asset-backed monetary framework. Fiat was being phased out and gold-backed sovereignty was being restored to a nation at a time. But this was never just about money. Between 15 and 25 June, high-level arrests were underway across Canada, Italy, and Australia. Names you haven't seen yet, but were quietly extracted and brought into tribunal custody. This wasn't theoretical anymore, it was happening. Then came 18 June 2025, when insiders report the 10 Days of Darkness protocol began internally, not for the public yet, but within the military satellite grid. Starlink, now integrated with the Quantum Communication Network, began test transmissions of the Emergency Broadcast System, EBS. Secure preloads were beamed to all major global relay points. The countdown had begun. By midnight on 22 June, select areas entered blackout conditions. Flights were canceled, travel bans implemented. Even the skies began to whisper the truth. The White House looks very green tonight. Clock activated. Red, castle. Green, castle. Stage 5. 5U. Roger Ball has been called. For those who understand Q signals, this was not metaphorical, it was literal. 23 June, the dam burst. The first wave of arrests and military tribunal extractions escalated. Sources cite over 300 zero-sealed indictments unsealed. Protected whistleblowers were moved to secure zones. The deep roots of global corruption were finally being severed. And now the world holds its breath as we reach 25 June 2025, the day wealth distribution begins under full GESARA protocol. Redemption centers across the U.S. are already processing appointments, focusing on Tier 4B participants, the patriots who held the line. This is about community restoration, not greed. Funds are being released to empower local economies and launch humanitarian initiatives. But it gets bigger. 27 June, MedBed rollout begins. The priority? Children, veterans, and the critically ill. This is what real healthcare looks like. Not profit-driven medicine, but quantum restorative healing, long suppressed by the pharmaceutical industry. By 28 June, 70 nations will have fully activated their redemption center networks. Biometric onboarding ensures transparency and access for verified citizens only. It's no longer about elite control, it's about sovereignty for all. From 29 June to 4 July, we expect a global banking blackout as announced over the EBS. This is a temporary shutdown to recalibrate systems to the new currency rate indexes and integrate QFS globally. Don't panic, prepare. 30 June. Final control of the satellite protocols is expected to transfer to the U.S. Space Force. Strategic MedBed healing centers open their doors. And the long-awaited training of quantum medical specialists begins. A new health paradigm is no longer optional, it's operational. And now the crescendo, 1-3 July. Gold certificates begin activating across North America. The old dollar, done. The new standard, real asset-backed sovereignty. 2 July, Starlink will begin streaming live MedBed demonstrations, curing disease, reversing aging, restoring lives. This isn't science fiction, it's suppressed truth finally brought to light. 3 July. Final synchronization of the emergency broadcast system. Military command confirms the signal is ready. 4 July 2025 Global Activation Day. On the 250th anniversary of American independence, Donald J. Trump will host a celebration unlike any other. This isn't just fireworks and flags, it's the relaunch of the American Republic under constitutional law. The QFS goes public. Masara begins. Suppressed healing tech is released. And the world changes forever. But we're not done yet. From 5 July through 14 July, a mass biometric synchronization of QFS accounts will take place. The U.S. Treasury's rainbow notes become the primary medium of global trade. Fiat currencies enter their final decline. 5 July, the International MedBed program goes live. Healing begins for everyone, not just the wealthy or well-connected. Every citizen will have the right to be restored. 20 July, expanded access begins for military personnel, children, and the chronically ill. What was once hidden will now become humanity's right. Conclusion, this is not the end. It's the beginning. The globalist system is collapsing, sovereignty is rising, and the truth is no longer underground, it's taking center stage. You were never crazy. You were early.
This thing's not going to be over, the good things are going to start coming in July, okay? The announcements, all this other stuff. But Trump said himself, he said it right in front of all the fake news media. He says you got Netanyahu over there signing a treaty, a ceasefire, and as soon as he signs a ceasefire, he broke the ceasefire, and he notified Trump, and he says, we're breaking this ceasefire bullshit, and he flew a bunch of planes over there and dropped a huge amount of bombs. So he wants to keep this thing going because he will be hung.
And what's happening at the moment, we're seeing the dismantling of an old system. We're seeing the cabal, the deep state, the draining of the swamp. We're seeing it all being dismantled. And we're seeing the birth of the new financial system coming in with ISO 20022 now coming into play in so many areas. We're seeing people talking about it in public. It's coming into the psyche. It's being fed in slowly, bit by bit by bit. There's the rejection of the central bank digital currency. There's so much going on. What is happening is it's happening gently, rather than bang, it's all happened overnight. But for me, I'm sitting there and enjoying watching it come bit by bit by bit by bit. And it's an amazing journey, just watching it all unfold. I've never been so peaceful in all my life. There's the other half of me that's quite happy just sitting back and watching it all unfold, because we all know the destination, but we're going there, and that is the end result. We're gonna get through this, but just enjoy the journey rather than being like a little kid going, when are we going to get there, Mummy?
Yeah.
It's 2 days after President Trump walked out of the G7 summit in Calgary, flying back to Washington in the dead of night to deal with the Israel-Iran crisis. But what happened before he left has the global elite in full panic mode. Most people think this is just about Iran and Israel, but what you're witnessing is something far bigger. Trump is systematically dismantling the post-war British imperial system, and he's doing it while delivering the largest blue-collar wage increases in 60 years. The empire's puppets can see their game is up. I'm Susan Kokinda, and I've been fighting this fight since 1971, when I joined Lyndon LaRouche's organization the day Nixon ended the Bretton Woods system. I've seen every attempt to break free from British imperial control, and I can tell you, what Trump is doing right now is unprecedented. So today, I'll break down what really happened at the G7 meeting, how Trump is navigating the Iran-Israeli crisis in ways most people don't understand, and how the British are panicking because Trump's economic and strategic revolution is working, and it can end the post-war globalist order if you understand it and support it. And you saw the headlines. Trump left the G7 summit in Calgary early, flying back to Washington to deal with the Israel-Iran crisis. But the real story is what Trump said before he left, right to the faces of the globalist elite. Standing next to Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, the very icon of post-war globalist economic policy, Trump called out the G7 for throwing Russia out of that institution in 2014. He said, the G7 used to be the G8. Barack Obama and a person named Trudeau didn't want to have Russia in it. I would say that was a mistake, because I think you wouldn't have a war right now if you had Russia in. Let that sink in. Trump, in front of the whole world, told the architects of the post-war order that their entire system is the problem. And he's right. The G7 represents everything Trump is dismantling. When Trump says you threw Russia out, and that was a mistake, he's not just talking about Ukraine. He's saying your system is the problem. Your system creates war. Because the old world order needs enemies to survive. Trump wants partners. One of those partners is Russia. Trump has had 2 recent discussions with Vladimir Putin about the potential of Russia helping mediate the Israel-Iran crisis. One discussion was right before Israel preemptively attacked Iran, and the other one was on Saturday, after Israel had launched the attacks. Just today, TASS reported again that Russia is ready to mediate. Also remember that Russia continues to pinpoint the role of the British in aiding not only Ukraine in their drone attacks on Russia, but in assisting Israel in the Iran operation. Now, Bill O'Reilly said something very revealing in a News Nation interview on Monday. O'Reilly said the following: earlier today, I texted with President Trump. He doesn't want to use American air power at this point because that would cause problems with China and Putin. As most of you know, O'Reilly is not a fan of Xi Jinping or Putin. Earlier in the interview, he agreed with the hyperventilating host that the world would be better off without them. But what he said about Trump is what's key. In what world does the President of the United States care about causing problems with China and Putin? Not in Mark Carney's world, not in the world of the recent British Defense Strategy Report, which treats Russia and China as permanent enemies, not in the world of Lindsey Graham or Mike Pompeo. Donald Trump is committed to a new world of sovereign nations, not a world in which nations are pieces on the geopolitical chessboard to be moved or sacrificed by the global overlords. Look, there's a lot of political turbulence. There's warnings that Trump is selling out to the neocons or the Zionists. And on the other hand, you have the hardcore war hawks who want to excommunicate Trump supporters who don't want to go to war with Iran. They're all missing this. Trump is trying to untangle decades of imperial policy, and he's doing it out in the open. Trump is up against political leaders and movements at home and abroad who've been created by the British elites. Zionists, radical Islamic fundamentalists, neocons, not to mention all the crazies on the left side of the equation. These forces are loose in a world that Donald Trump has to deal with as he tries to take command of the situation while maintaining his commitment to defend the United States and reestablish it as a sovereign republic. And that's what terrifies the old world has-beens. But Donald Trump needs something else. He needs people here in the United States and around the world to cut through the ground-level fog of war and see clearly this larger picture and the deeper principles. That's what we do at Promethean Action, and I encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter and become part of a community of people who can think and act strategically. So let's talk about Iran. Social media is a hotbed of rumors and fear-mongering. Is Trump caving into the neocons and the Zionists? I don't think so. Will the U.S. enter into this conflict if Iran refuses to budge? Well, Donald Trump has been pretty clear on that. And maybe by the time you watch this, that immediate question will have been answered. But the more durable question is, do you understand the principles at stake? In a recent tweet from Vice President J.D. Vance, I think you find that answer. He said, POTUS has been amazingly consistent over 10 years that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And over the last few months, he encouraged his foreign policy team to reach a deal with the Iranians to accomplish this goal. The president has made clear that Iran cannot have uranium enrichment, and he said repeatedly that this would happen one of two ways, the easy way or the other way. Vance goes on to explain that Iran could have civilian nuclear power, but they've continued to produce enriched uranium far above civilian needs, in violation of their obligations. And then Vance stresses, and of course, people are right to be worried about foreign entanglement after the last 25 years of idiotic foreign policy. But I believe the president has earned some trust on the issue. And having seen this up close and personal, I can assure you that he is only interested in using the U.S. military to accomplish the American people's goals. Whatever he does, that is his focus. And that's the difference between Trump and the neocons. The neocons and their British imperial controllers want endless war and perpetual regime change. Look at Iran and Israel, both hotbeds of British intelligence operations stretching back throughout the post-war period. In her Monday brief, Barbara discussed how the British, with plenty of help from the CIA, overthrew the Mossadegh government in Iran in the 1950s, put the Shah in, and then overthrew him when it suited their purposes, which led to the installation of the Islamic regime. Trump is committed to ending that, but you have to recognize that he and his relatively small team are dealing with a culture of war and regime change, which is deeply embedded in the intelligence and military institutions. But they're also doing something even more fundamental. Trump is threatening to replace the post-war liberal economic order with the most dramatic return to the American system in generations. While Trump was dealing with the global crisis, back home, his policies delivered something incredible. Blue-collar workers saw real wage growth of almost 2% in just his first 5 months, the largest increase for any administration in nearly 60 years. Treasury Secretary Bessent pointed out that the nearly 2% rise was unprecedented, and it was a result of the emphasis on manufacturing and commitment to remove illegal immigrants from the workforce. When ICE raided a meatpacking plant in Omaha, dozens of Americans showed up the next day to fill out job applications. That's how you restore the dignity of work. And the British Empire has spent centuries convincing Americans that prosperity requires imperial wars and cheap foreign labor. Trump is proving them wrong. But while Trump fights the global empire abroad, he does face sabotage at home. Right now, the same neocon Rhino Collective in the Senate that's opposed peaceful settlements in Ukraine and Iran is trying to gut Trump's economic revolution. Trump's one big, beautiful bill represents the starting point of his economic revolution. But Senate Republicans infected with what I call the twin disease of perpetual war and libertarian free trade ideology are trying to water down the provisions that will help Trump's growing working class base. They're cutting Medicaid support, undermining the no tax on tips provision, and reducing the manufacturing incentives that could create up to 6 million blue-collar jobs. If they succeed in gutting this bill, they'll sabotage Trump's promise to American workers and potentially hand the midterm elections to Democrats. Now, here's where even Trump's best supporters fall short. They'll talk about the deep state, the war machine, and the CIA, and they're not wrong. But when Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon don't connect Trump's outreach to Russia and China with his broader strategy to destroy British imperial control, they leave people spinning their wheels. When Trump talks about working with Russia and China, he's not betraying American interests. He's building the coalition necessary to finally break British imperial hegemony. Think about it. Russia has vast natural resources. China has manufacturing capacity. And America has the technological and capital markets. Together, they represent a powerful combination, which could also include India, that would represent an alternative to the London-centered financial system that's dominated the world since World War II. And that's why the British are willing to risk World War III to stop Trump. They know that if he succeeds in creating a new alignment of sovereign nations, their centuries-old game is over. So the only way through this crisis is to recognize the deeper nature of this fight. It's the American system versus the British system. It's about whether we'll have a world of sovereign nations cooperating for mutual benefit or a world of endless wars designed to prevent any nation from achieving true independence. So don't get lost in the day-to-day noise, the Twitter hysteria, or the media's apocalyptic analysis of every tactical move. What you're witnessing is the potential to destroy a 400-year-old imperial system and the birth of something new. When blue-collar workers get their biggest pay raise in 60 years, when Trump walks out on globalist institutions, when he reaches out to Russia and China to end imperial wars, these are not separate events. They're all part of the same strategy. Restore American sovereignty and help other nations do the same. That's where Promethean action comes in. We've been fighting this fight for over 50 years, and we understand both the enemy and the solution. While others get caught up in the tactical battles, we keep our eyes on the strategic prize, ending the British Empire once and for all. Hundreds of new subscribers have joined us recently because they recognize we offer something different: historical depth, economic understanding, and a strategic vision to navigate this transition. We just got halfway to our goal of reaching 1,000 paid members, and we need your help to give us the ability to do more videos and reach more people by achieving that goal. The old world is dying, the new world is being born. Let's make sure it's the world we want our children to inherit. So subscribe, share this video, and join us in making history. The future belongs to sovereign republics, not global empires, but only if we fight for it.
Trump's approach to peace is fascinating. He broke traditional diplomatic norms, engaging directly with North Korea, which no one thought possible. His administration brokered the Abraham Accords, normalizing relations between Israel and several Arab nations, a significant shift in Middle Eastern politics. Critics argue his methods were unconventional, even reckless, but sometimes shaking things up can lead to unexpected breakthroughs. His focus on America first also shifted the global power dynamics, forcing allies and adversaries alike to reconsider their strategies. So, is there more to it? Perhaps it's about challenging the status quo and daring to take risks in the name of peace.
At 5:05 a.m. EST, the quantum financial system went live, sealing our future. The banks we feared, gone. credit slavery snapped. We're stepping into a living system, encrypted by light, responding only to truth. The U.S. has been under military governance since 2021, and now, under Trump's command, the Earth Alliance is dismantling deep state control. Over $89 trillion in illicit funds are being seized, and the Federal Reserve is on the brink of dissolution. Los Angeles is a flashpoint of insurrection, but military forces are moving in. The QFS is not just a tech upgrade, it's a revolution in financial freedom, where you control your money instantly and securely. Welcome to the new era of sovereignty.
We're shifting from paper fiat currencies to digital gold dollar credits. Imagine a world where every foreign currency exchanges at the value of 1 gram of gold. The ZIM, just 1 microgram. Remember, banks don't control your accounts. They're just there to help you navigate your tech. They don't sell gold and often lack knowledge about it. If they pressure you to invest, be cautious. Ensure you're getting a guaranteed return. Wealthy individuals lock their money in for a set time, similar to a certificate of deposit. Stay informed and keep an eye on the gold spot price. It's your key to understanding value in this new system.
Another one you like is Ripple. You said it is the coin to be looking at right now.
Absolutely.
Why?
Okay, so Ripple actually was the second largest coin prior to the SEC's investigation of them. They did this really weird lawsuit against them, and basically the Ripple...
Imagine a world where some of the most iconic figures in history are actually alive, hidden away in witness protection, or using advanced Tesla technology. Think about it. Legends like Tupac, Elvis, and even JFK Jr. could be living among us, pulling the strings behind the scenes. What if all these names, Tom Petty, Farrah Fawcett, and even Robin Williams, are part of a grand conspiracy? It sounds wild, but the connections are intriguing. Could these individuals be part of a secret society, influencing our culture and politics from the shadows? The more you dig, the more you realize that this isn't just a fantasy. It's a rabbit hole worth exploring. What if the truth is stranger than fiction?
What if the collapse of a government wasn't simply about politics, but a culmination of deep internal fractures, economic turmoil, and shifting global alliances? According to the visions of South African prophet Seaner van Rensburg, the downfall of the black government in South Africa would be a complex tapestry of internal strife and external intervention. Let's explore this prophecy and what it might mean for the nation's future. Internal contradictions, a government undone from within. Van Rensburg foresaw that internal divisions would plague a future black government. He described black oxen turning their guns on one another, symbolizing factionalism and power struggles that would weaken the government from within. This internal discord, coupled with what he called moral decay, would erode public trust. He saw empty baskets lying on the seashore, a chilling metaphor for a scarcity of resources and the government's failure to provide for its people. The imagery of pigs hinted at corruption and greed, painting a picture of leadership consumed by self-serving interests rather than serving the nation. Economic collapse was another cornerstone of this vision. Van Rensburg described sorghum husks disappearing and trains and motor vehicles at a standstill, symbolizing the breakdown of essential services. These economic hardships, paired with growing discontent, would create the perfect storm for widespread social unrest. External forces, a game of shifting power. Van Rensburg's prophecies also highlight the role of external players in the government's collapse. Germany's resurgence. He foresaw a powerful Germany rising from the ashes. Van Rensburg's prophecies suggest that Germany's resurgence occurs both before and after World War III, reasserting itself on the world stage. In his visions, a blue beast grew strong, while a train from the west brought weapons to South Africa. This suggested German military support for the Afrikaner cause, destabilizing the black government and empowering its opponents. England's decline. At the same time, England's influence in Africa wanes. Van Rensburg described a black pig with white hairs hanging in England, symbolizing racial tensions and the collapse of British power. England's withdrawal from Africa would leave a power vacuum, further destabilizing the region and removing a key source of support for the black government. The Afrikaner resurgence, a nation reborn. Van Rensburg believed the Afrikaner people would endure a period of darkness and suffering before uniting under a new leader, a visionary figure who would guide them to reclaim their place in South Africa. He envisioned a white canvas protecting the Afrikaner nation and hobbled horses prepared for battle, symbols of resilience and readiness. But this resurgence would not come peacefully. Van Rensburg described a bucket of blood being overturned and the Afrikaner flag dipped in it, foretelling a violent and bloody reckoning. Despite the turmoil, his prophecy framed this struggle as a necessary step toward reclaiming Afrikaner sovereignty. A complex and controversial vision. Van Rensburg's prophecies offer a stark and divisive narrative of South Africa's future. They challenge us to grapple with questions of power, unity, and the role of external forces in shaping a nation's destiny. What do you think?
Nicolaas Siener van Rensburg was no ordinary man. A humble farmer from South Africa, he claimed to receive visions from God. Though he could not read or write, his daughter Anna recorded his visions faithfully. Even legendary Boer War General Koos de la Rey believed in him, calling Van Rensburg a true prophet of God. But nothing would shake the nation more than the prophecy he delivered in July 1914. On July 11th, just weeks before World War I broke out, Van Rensburg made an exhausting 90-kilometer journey on horseback to visit General de la Rey at his farm near Lichtenberg. He was deeply troubled. Something serious was coming. Van Rensburg told the general he saw him bareheaded, a sign of death in his visions. He saw a white piece of paper with a black number 15 hanging over Lichtenberg, and night falling across the town. He described mourning crepe draped over the area, and flags at half-mast. He also saw a steam-powered wagon, a train, carrying only a few people. It stopped at many towns, picking up the grieving. A commando of horsemen from Schweitzer Reneke would arrive and camp in the town square. Just 2 months later, on September 15, 1914, the vision came true. De la Rey was traveling to Potchefstroom with General Christian Beyers when they ran into a police roadblock in Johannesburg. The police were hunting the Foster gang, but in a tragic turn, a stray shot struck General de la Rey. He died instantly. His hat was never found. That very night, September 15th, the nation mourned. Special funeral trains flooded into Lichtenberg. The commando from Schweitzer Reneke camped in the very market square Van Rensburg described. The funeral entered through the northern door of the church, just as he'd said. But the prophecy didn't end there. General Beyers, who had been with de la Rey, was seen in the same vision. He later died tragically while trying to cross the Vaal River, drowned during an escape, just as Van Rensburg had foreseen. This single prophecy, the vision, the warning, and the tragic fulfillment, cemented Van Rensburg's reputation as a man who saw what others could not. And it changed the course of South African history.
They thought they had caught the mastermind behind the SASA scheme. But as the handcuffs clicked and the news broke, a darker truth lurked beneath the surface, one that would expose an even bigger, hidden empire. It all began inside a crowded ShopRite store in Soweto. 2 women, a stack of SASA cards, and a simple tip-off to police. What seemed like a small-time scam unraveled into a nationwide betrayal of trust, involving government officials, fake identities, and millions stolen from South Africa's poorest citizens. Now, with whistleblowers stepping forward and arrests piling up, one question haunts the nation. Who really runs the network? 2 computer science students at Stellenbosch University were working on a project that had nothing to do with crime. Their goal was to test vulnerabilities in public and private systems, not to cause harm, but to help improve security. They chose to start with something simple, the South African Social Security Agency, known as SASA. At first, it was just numbers, but what they found would shake the entire nation. They began by comparing national birth data with SASA grant applications. February 2005 stood out. The national records showed just over 82,000 births that month, but the number of grant applications tied to that birth month was nearly 75,000. That meant almost 91% of people born in that month had applied for grants, a number that didn't make any sense. Not every person in South Africa is struggling. Not every 18-year-old qualifies for a grant. These students knew something was wrong. The data wasn't adding up. They couldn't ignore it. So they expanded their investigation. They looked at birth years between 2002 and 2006. They also looked at older generations born between 1960 and 2005. The younger group showed a 90% grant application rate. The older group was less than 50%. That gap was too wide. It didn't follow any logical pattern. Something much bigger was happening. Then things got personal. The students found that SASA had paid out grants using their own identity numbers. Neither of them had ever applied for a grant. They were shocked. This wasn't just data manipulation. It was full-on identity theft, and it had reached their own records. To see how deep the issue went, they surveyed students on campus. Out of 60 students, 58 had active SASA grants under their names. But here's the kicker. 56 of them said they never applied for any grant. That was no longer an error. That was mass fraud. Something organized was going on, and it had infiltrated SASA's system on a national level. The students knew they couldn't keep quiet. They went public with their findings. It didn't take long for the story to spread like wildfire. Major news outlets picked it up. Headlines screamed about massive fraud within one of South Africa's most critical financial systems. As the nation watched in disbelief, the pressure started piling on the government. The Minister of Social Development made a public appearance. She promised the entire country that there would be a full investigation. She gave the team 30 days to uncover the truth. For a moment, people felt hope. The news lit up social media. Radio talk shows buzzed. People wanted answers. They wanted heads to roll. Everyone from taxpayers to grant recipients felt betrayed. But then, silence. Weeks passed. No updates, no arrests, no word from the so-called investigation team. It was like someone had pulled the plug on the case. People started asking questions. Was the investigation really happening, or was it being buried? The minister's promise faded from headlines. Anger turned into frustration. Suspicion grew. Whispers about an inside job started to spread. The students had expected some kind of backlash, but they didn't expect a blackout. Their phones stopped ringing. No one from the government called, and yet they knew what they had seen. The numbers didn't lie. Someone was stealing identities. Someone was cashing in on fake grants. And it wasn't just small-time crooks. This was organized, calculated, and protected. At Stellenbosch, the students kept digging. They wanted to know how deep this thing went. If their own IDs had been used, how many others had suffered the same fate? They reached out to peers, lecturers, even journalists. They weren't letting it go. And neither was the public. Even with no word from the authorities, people began to connect the dots. Fake applications, duplicate payouts, stolen identities. Everything pointed to a major breach inside the system, but no one was being held accountable. And the silence from officials only made it worse. This was not a glitch. It was a syndicate, one so bold it used real people's identities to bleed the country dry and left no visible trail. But the trail was there, buried in data, hidden in systems. And 2 university students had uncovered the first clue in a crime worth millions. It was just a normal afternoon at a ShopRite in Soweto, but what happened next would change the course of a national investigation. 2 women strolled into the store and headed straight to the ATMs. They weren't shopping. Instead, they were making back-to-back withdrawals using different SASA cards. At first, the staff thought little of it until they noticed just how many times the women returned to the machine. The shop workers kept watching. Something was off. The women moved in a pattern, always checking around before they slid in another card. More people gathered near the ATM as the cash started to pour out. In total, the women used more than a dozen different cards in a matter of minutes. That's when one of the workers made a call to the police, but they didn't alert the women. They kept calm, pretending everything was normal. They knew that tipping off the suspects could ruin the chance of catching them in the act. All they had to do now was wait. The police didn't take long. Within minutes, officers entered the store quietly. They moved in fast, blocking off the exits without drawing attention. The 2 women were still at the ATM, completely unaware that the net was closing in. When they were surrounded, they froze. Police searched them on the spot. What they found was shocking. The women had over 40,000 rands in cash, freshly withdrawn. They also had dozens of SASA cards, each linked to different identities. No clear explanation, no legal documents to match. Right there, police knew this was no random crime. This wasn't just 2 people stealing. This had signs of something much bigger, organized fraud, calculated and quiet until now, and they were just getting started. As police escorted the women out of the store, something else caught their eye. A man was waiting in a car nearby. He didn't look surprised when the women were arrested. Instead, he sat still, like he knew the game was over. Officers approached and asked for identification. They searched the man and the evidence piled up quickly. He had a stack of bank cards, more SASA cards, 5 different passports from multiple countries, and over a dozen SIM cards. They also found photos, identity shots that looked like they were for making fake ID.
Ek staan vas met die gordel van die waarheid, 'n hart vir geregtigheid. Ek sal veg tot die einde. Ek staan vas in die skoene van gereedheid, die skuld van my geloof in U.
We cannot move forward. The nation cannot move forward. I don't care how good our how much Trump, adjusts the economy, and he will, but we cannot move forward unless people are held accountable. And I mean very, very senior people, and they all know who I'm talking about. You know who I'm talking about, and I've said it many times. It's the start with Obama and work your way down, right? I mean, and maybe you don't throw a former president into prison, but maybe you do. Maybe somebody says, well, who directed you, John Brennan? Who directed you, Jim Clapper? Who directed you, Susan Rice? Under oath, under the lights, and with the threat of prison. Okay. And so who directed you? Well, if they say nothing, okay, then that's fine. Then you're going to go to prison. You're going to prison. You're going to prison for treason. Okay. Treason. That's a very strong word. It's a very strong word. And like all these pardons, right? These pardons, the only thing that can't overcome a pardon is treason, is the commitment of treason. I mean, I get called a traitor all the time. And I say, well, wait a second. And, so if I'm a traitor, why am I walking the streets, right? If I committed treason, why am I walking the streets? I was never charged with that. They dismissed my case because they lied, right? And so, you think Mueller and Wiseman, Andrew Wiseman, who was the deputy to Mueller, would have let me go that I was a traitor or that I committed treason? The treason was committed against me as not just Mike Flynn, an Army general, but the national security advisor by a duly elected president of the United States. The outgoing administration under Barack H. Obama committed treason. They committed a conspiracy to undermine a duly elected president, and it hasn't stopped. It hasn't stopped.
If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Your support really makes a difference and helps us reach more people who could benefit from this content. Sharing is also a great way to spread the word. Think of it as passing along a good book recommendation. Every like, subscription, and share helps us grow this community and create even more valuable content for you. So, if you believe in what we're doing, let's get the message out there together. Thanks for being part of this journey.
Tell the White House we need backup from South Africa now.
We are the backup.
We are the backup.
Punte, jy skop hom soos naas jou eyster.
Impi Bonanza empieza Ubani benga chinja mabubesi Impi Bonanza empieza Ubani benga chinja mabubesi Impi Bonanza empieza.
Ethiopia or South Africa? Which country is actually better? Let me just show you guys what Ethiopia looks like first.
Al oído gimiéndome y yo la sigo enamorando, regalando, tú te comprando, lo usted mami te quiere. Ahora nos estamos alejando, no te estoy viendo, no te apolando. Esta sola tú prefieres. Ven y dame un chance, aguayarte allá abajo.
But bro, if you thought Ethiopia looked crazy, let me just show you what South Africa looks like.